A dose of science news now. Researchers at Columbia University in New York have developed a new kind of technology that they believe one day could decipher what a person wants to say and be able to channel it through a speech synthesizer. The researchers believe that purely from brain wave activity, the technology could give a voice to the voiceless, an artificial voice for patients who have lost their own ability to speak. The Columbia study used epilepsy patients, monitored their brains as the patients listened to stories and voices that were recording numbers, and they were able to monitor what they were hearing by the feedback from the brain activity. The research still at a very early stage, but with me now in studio is Dr. ELANA GOLUMBIC with Bar-Ilan University's Gondar Brain Research Center, also a former researcher who did a postdoc at Columbia, knows these researchers very well. Thank you, doctor, for being with us in studio. I'm not a smart man, but this is a really cool story, and I want to know the basics, the idea behind it. If I can't speak, but my brain is still working and has brain waves and activity, how is it possible to convert the brain activity into words, to transfer that into thoughts and ideas?
Yeah, I agree.
It's tough to explain, I'd imagine.
Yeah, so like you said, the research is at a very, very early stage, but the basic idea is this. Our brains are constantly encoding all the information that comes to our senses, and they're doing lots of computations. They use electricity and they generate brain waves so that you can understand what I'm saying right now.
Okay.
So the idea is if we can study and understand the code, the neural code that the brain is using to decipher what you're doing right now to my voice, right? If we can kind of tap into that code, then we can channel that information to a computer or to a speaker, and we can also kind of listen in to what your brain is listening into.
So it's a promising first step, but that code, as you mentioned, is it a feeling? Like I would feel confusion or fear or happiness, or is it specific words? Like if I'm hungry, would there be a code that, and then you could transfer that code if I can't speak? I'm hungry, I want a Coca-Cola.
Right, so the code right now that we look at is actually what the auditory cortex is, how you're hearing the sounds, right? So the ear knows how to take all these waves that I generate with my voice, turn them into frequencies, turn them into intensities, and that's how it differentiates a high tone from a low one, or a word that starts with a ba or a sort of shh, very calming voice. So that's what the brain, the auditory part of the brain, is doing. And that's what the researchers are trying to differentiate, how the brain is able to decipher the different kinds of sounds. And from those sounds, then you can build them into syllables, and from the syllables you can build the words, and then at some point maybe you can also extract meaning. But they're working from a very bottom-up perspective. They're not working from like, oh, what are you thinking about? What is the concept?
All right, so you did your postdoc at Columbia. Now you work here in Israel for Bar-Ilan, the Gondar Brain Research Center. This field, electrocardiography, you're monitoring the brain waves. How advanced is it here in Israel? Are you doing similar research here in Israel to help patients and people who can't speak, or maybe even in comas, to understand what's going on in their minds?
Right, so there are many different ways where we can measure brain activity from human beings, and what we do is we put electrodes. Sometimes with people who are healthy, we can put them like on the scalp, and that's what we do in my lab, for example, and in many other labs. What these researchers were able to do, because they worked within a hospital setting with patients who were undergoing brain surgery, was that they were able to implant electrodes on the surface of the brain. So it makes it an invasive process, so obviously not something you do with healthy people.
How close are you to interpreting my dreams, let's say, or my producer Shai's dreams, which is very
far. Yeah, no worries here. Yeah.
All right, Dr. ELANA GOLUMBIC, thank you so much for breaking it down. Really promising, interesting first research. It's very intense stuff, but thank you so much for explaining it.
My
and good
pleasure.
luck with your research here in Israel as well.
Thank you very much.